What's going on, Dub Nation? You're watching Warriors Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith, and on today's show, we have some free agency news to discuss on Jonathan Kuminga and a potential other Warriors free agency signing, as well as the latest NBA trade rumor mill, which is heating up as we get closer and closer to the NBA draft. Now, before we get started with all of that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because if you want Golden State Warriors hoops back, this is the place where you're going to find people talking about it right here at Warriors Today. So subscribe to the channel, and then when you do, comment down below. Where does Jonathan Kuminga play in 2025? Is it with the Dubs or is it with somebody else? You let your voice be heard in the comments section. Look, man, it might be with the Golden State Warriors. Back in blue and gold, most recent reports have suggested that the most likely outcome for the Warriors offseason is that Jonathan Kuminga ends up re-signing with the team. And look, man, if you've watched my videos before, then you would know that I'm not the biggest fan of this outcome, but with the financial complications and the current trade market right now around the league, it looks pretty likely that the Warriors end up retaining JK. Now, let's go a little bit more in depth here as to why it's a little bit complicated to move off of Jonathan Kuminga. Now, this offseason, he becomes a restricted free agent. The Warriors expected to extend the qualifying offer, which means he's a free agent with some restrictions that the Warriors can match any offer that he ends up signing with another team. And the max offer that he can get this offseason is $38.7 million a season. Now, the incoming salary for any team that were to sign him would be obviously 100% of that, let's say $38.7 mil. And then for the Warriors case, since he's a restricted free agent, the Warriors would only be sending out 50% of that. So in that case, about $19.5 million. Salary matching rules apply there after that. Now, Jonathan Kuminga's contract can be aggregated with other contracts with Golden State, but with pretty bad depth, let's be honest, on the roster at this point. They can't afford to give away too many of their big pieces, and they don't have a ton of big contracts anyway on their books. Anthony Slater with this a couple of weeks ago, kind of setting the stage for Kuminga's offseason. He said the Warriors front office, Kuminga's representatives, and the league are expected to explore all options into July. But team sources have been hinting that because of these market and financial restrictions, there's a likely world where the most obvious and prudent path is for them to bring Kuminga back and figure the rest out later. And we also heard just a couple of days ago, we reported it right here on the show, Monte Poole, Warriors insider at NBC Sports Bay Area, said it's very likely that the Warriors find a way to keep Jonathan Kuminga. And that basically means that they're not going to find a trade partner for him this offseason, whether it's they don't get the value back that they would want or the money just doesn't work because there aren't a ton of players that make an impact for Golden State, making half of what Kuminga would get on his next contract. But then I saw this today that kind of further cemented this notion for me. An anonymous Western Conference executive said the following about Jonathan Kuminga. They said just sign him and wait. That's the logical way to do this. It's unorthodox, but you pay Kuminga, you play him, you see if it works. It probably won't. But in that case, you just trade him at the deadline and you gave him $25 million a year, you get $25 million in players back. And we have talked about this over the past couple days that Kuminga coming back to Golden State is a real possibility. And what did Poole say after? It's very likely that Golden State brings it back, that he also might not be a long-term piece. That Golden State and everybody in the building believes that Kuminga is not a player that is going to bring them championships down the road. So what do? Instead of, getting half of the, value back for Kuminga, essentially, that you would get for him in the season this summer, why not just re-sign him to an extension, see if it works for a couple of months to start the season, and then assess at the trade deadline when he is eligible after December, after 6 months upon signing the contract. It would be really nice if this wasn't the case for Golden State. Look, I would want to get off of Kuminga's contract this summer. I would want to start on October whatever with the roster that hopefully goes into May whatever into the postseason. Like, I don't want a lot of roster shakeup. We already had that happen in the 24-25 NBA season, so it just doesn't make all that much sense to have more roster shakeup with a very finite amount of time left in Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler's championship window. And look, on the flip side, I'd like to get as much back for Kuminga as we possibly can. So that means essentially re-signing him this summer. I struggle to find the words with how I feel about this because, look, man, it doesn't fit. Steve Kerr knows it doesn't fit. Mike Dunleavy deep down probably knows it doesn't fit. The only person that believes in Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors' long-term relationship is Joe Lacob, and clearly he has shown that his basketball decision-making and acumen is really just not up to par, and he shouldn't be making those type of decisions. So I guess my main point here is I want to get as much back possible for Jonathan Kuminga, but not at the expense of keeping him into next season. So some sign and trade targets for Jonathan Kuminga alone this offseason. Remember, it's 50% of what he would get. And let's just talk about around a $25 to $30 million deal. I do not expect Kuminga on the open market, especially even in a sign and trade scenario, to command more than $30 million annually. So some names, Kobe White, we've talked about a bunch on the channel. $12.9 million, a really good on-the-ball scorer, and something Golden State doesn't really lacks in their backcourt outside of Steph. And then Daniel Gafford making $14.4 million. That would be a little bit heftier of a price and would also require a Kuminga sign and trade to involve the Dallas Mavericks and involve a third team that can take on Kuminga's salary. Like, Jonathan Kuminga's not going to Dallas, but as far as a player's value that I would like back, Daniel Gafford is Kobe White. Like, that's the kind of tier of player that I'm looking for with Kuminga. You could argue both these guys are better or more valuable than JK, but the money matches up. JK is also 22 with a whole heck of a lot of potential. Don't forget that. You tell me, though, do the Golden State Warriors re-sign Jonathan Kuminga this offseason? Yes or no? Let me know, plain and simple, in the comments section. Are they bringing him back? And this has nothing to do with long term. They could end up trading him at next deadline. Do they bring him back at least, though, this summer? Is Kuminga putting pen to paper with the Dubs? Let me know in the comments section. Right now, I'd say yes. Like, it's unfortunate with the way that the market looks right now. Nobody's got money, and I don't know how many teams want Jonathan Kuminga on their roster, to be quite honest with you. I have some teams in mind like the Chicago Bulls. We had thought for the longest time the Nets would be interested, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case at this point. So I don't really know where Kuminga look, or where Golden State and Kuminga, I guess you could say, look from here. As far as what Jonathan Kuminga has going on, we've been watching him in the gym the past couple of days, getting some videos up from his trainers. He posted a photo dump on Instagram playing with AJ DeBanza and all that stuff. It's great. We see it every summer. Kuminga playing in an empty gym. I want to see it in a 5v5 setting, fitting next to Steph Curry, which he has yet to do in 4 years. Now, according to Anthony Slater, Kuminga himself has not yet shut the door and slammed the door on a return to Golden State, which makes sense. I'm sure he and his agents and representation know that the market probably isn't that great for him this offseason. They can do math. And as far as Kuminga's relationship with everybody in Golden State, like, it seems to be fine on a personal level. It really just comes down to basketball. And, I mean, if I was Kuminga, that would boil over into being personal for me. But apparently there's no irreconcilable player or coach and player and organizational differences. So I guess that's something. And then Anthony Slater said that Kuminga still has visions of becoming an all-star. Now, again, if I were him, like, do I believe in that becoming real in Golden State? I'm not so sure I do. And if I sign a 4-year deal, there's no guarantee I get traded. And I'm trying to look out for my long-term future as well. What about the next contract that Kuminga probably wants to get way more than $25 million a year on? I'm not so sure that his best chance of becoming an all-star and getting that type of money is in Golden State. And kind of just to wrap up free agency and all this stuff for the Dubs right now, I wanted to shift quickly to Rob Murrows, who tweeted this out. And I'm not going to lie, I was even hesitant to put this in the show today because I'm not so sure how credible and reputable Ball Report X is, but it seems like they have a legion of quote-unquote insiders. And I'm also not so sure that this is the most groundbreaking report either. It says the Warriors and guard Gary Payton II have mutual interest in negotiating a new deal. Golden State is looking to sign Payton to a discount contract. I don't think it's the craziest deal, but it was something of note that came across my timeline today. And remember back to the trade deadline when Golden State was looking at a potential Nikola Vucevic deal? Well, the reason they didn't make that deal is because it would have made a guy like Gary Payton much more difficult to re-sign come this summer if he was dealt in that deal, as well as Kevon Looney, who, when they weren't traded this deadline, it seemed like Golden State was pretty set on bringing them back this offseason. And as far as kind of what the figures would look like for those guys, I would expect vet min deals for both GP2 and Kevon Looney for that matter. Both longtime Dubs, both fit the culture, both great in the locker room, and both at this point established veteran leaders within the Warriors organization. So it would make sense from an organizational standpoint to bring those guys back. But I will say I'm not so sure I want them playing as big of roles as they did in the postseason late next year for Golden State. Now, coming up, we're going to go through the latest NBA trade reports as far as what's going on around the league with Giannis, Kevin Durant, and how it all impacts Golden State, because in a way, it kind of all impacts the Kuminga trade ordeal as well. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, I got to tell you guys about this awesome deal we got going on with our friends over at Fanatics. How often do you see a Steph Curry jersey half off? Yeah, you always see players who leave teams. Like Clay jerseys, yeah, they're heavily discounted right now. How often do you see Steph Curry jerseys on the low. 50% off at this link right here. Chatsports.com/Curry City. It was last year's City jerseys. You can get this fresh Curry drip right here at this link. I put that in the comment section and description of today's video as well, so it's easy to click on. Go get yourself a fresh Steph Curry jersey if you don't have one today. Okay, so let's start with Kevin Durant as far as what's going on around the NBA trade rumor mill. And we'll keep this fairly brief because, let's be honest, Golden State's not really in the market to acquire Kevin Durant. They kind of missed out the trade deadline. And then as far as Giannis goes, that's always been a pipe dream. He would have to demand a trade to Golden State. So they're not getting either one of these guys. However, a West rival might end up with Kevin Durant. The Spurs are looked at as the most likely destination for a Durant trade, according to multiple reports at this point. We've heard from some Phoenix, Arizona AZ Sports reporters that Durant's camp is eyeing the Spurs as a destination. The San Antonio Spurs also have the draft capital and the young, assets capital on their roster to be able to make a trade really work with the Suns. And according to a couple other reports, the Suns have lowered their asking price on Kevin Durant. So it could be a package of like Devin Vassell, Barnes, Keldon Johnson, whatever combo those two guys, and like the number 14th pick. And this thing could get done. And Bill Simmons thinks it might be done already. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if KD to the Spurs is done already, and they haven't announced it. Basically, they've agreed on specifics, just announced it on the week of the draft. This goes back to the Giannis thing. I think they traded for KD just because it costs less. And that's wholeheartedly true. The Spurs would have to give up the number 2 pick. They'd have to give up maybe even Stephon Castle, both, to go out there and go get a Giannis Antetokounmpo to San Antonio. So it doesn't seem like they're really in that market at this point. Not many teams might be. But as far as KD goes, it's not an if, it's a when with the Durant trade. And I think that they're all just waiting for the finals to kind of wrap up for this thing to be formally announced. It looks like KD is going to be teaming up with Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox, and probably both Stephon Castle and the presumptive number 2 overall pick, Dylan Harper, this next season. And that presents a lot of challenges and is really bad for the Golden State Warriors. Like, the Spurs, before the Wemby injury, were kind of creeping up towards the play-in and becoming a threat in Golden State's way down the stretch of the season. Now, I hope that the Dubs aren't really fighting for a play-in spot next year. That I really hope, with them being on a 60-win pace after adding Butler, they can kind of ride that in the next regular season. But man, the Spurs are now a major threat. Like, if you'd be lying to me if you said that the Warriors on paper have a better roster than the San Antonio Spurs heading into next season. Like, it's an objective fact. The Spurs are kind of stacked, and it's crazy that they, shut down all their guys down the stretch of the season, how that was all kind of allowed and really just not looked at as wrong. But they ended up getting another premium draft selection just 1 year after, or 2 years, I guess, after Wemby got drafted. They've had the number 1 pick, the number 4 pick, and the number 2 pick this year, each of the last 3 seasons. This is just unreal. And then you add De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Durant. Okay, so 2 All-NBA players and 3 top 5 draft selections that are all really, really good players. 2 of them Rookie of the Year. So, like, if you're telling me that the Spurs aren't going to be better than the Warriors with Kevin Durant on the roster, you're lying. So we'll see how it all works out. Look, this team is heavily hinged on whether or not Wemby, KD can stay healthy. So are the Warriors. They are one of the most old teams in the league. So it's going to be an uphill battle in the uber competitive Western Conference for Golden State. They're going to have to improve the roster. As far as the Giannis front goes, look, I'm not so sure anything's happening here, man. Giannis has not yet requested a trade out of Milwaukee after previous reports that he is open-minded about a new home this offseason. It doesn't really seem like that's going to happen at this point. Brian Windhorst of ESPN said this. He said, right now, there is no Giannis Antetokounmpo trade market. There is no Giannis Antetokounmpo trade discussion. He has not asked for it, and the Bucks are not looking to trade the Greek Freak. Look, before this, like, teams were already getting ready to prepare Giannis Antetokounmpo trade offers this offseason because, look, the Bucks are in a really shitty spot in the East, even in the bad East. Like, Dame's out for the year with a torn Achilles. Their next best player after that's who? Kyle Kuzma? Like, they're in a really, really rough spot. But to be fair, like, credit to the Bucks, man. They feel pretty confident in keeping Giannis at this point, and partly because Giannis is the city of Milwaukee. Giannis is the Milwaukee Bucks. It just doesn't seem right for him to be wearing another jersey, and I think he thinks that too. He said this when he was interviewed about the NBA Finals going on right now. He was just rooting for good basketball, and he said, the finals are different. I hope to be back soon with the Bucks. So, doesn't really seem like Giannis has any urgency to be leaving Milwaukee at this point. And Look, it was always a pipe dream for him to come to Golden State, but there were some serious contenders around the league that were like kind of banking almost on a Giannis kind of being available this offseason, like the New York Knicks, like the Houston Rockets, even like the Spurs. Like, there's only one Kevin Durant to go around. So after that, Giannis not on the block. Like, isn't a lot of room for those teams to get to the next level in this NBA. So like with Shams saying a couple of weeks ago, well, this offseason is going to be when we went on McAfee, he was talking crazy. He was like, this offseason is going to be the most craziest ever. Well, will it actually be? I doubt Giannis gets moved now, and the Durant thing kind of just seems wrapped up at this point. So is this going to be the craziest offseason ever? I'm not so sure, but Brian Windhorst did say that things are going to pick up soon. He said the NBA offseason is going to happen faster than normal. Shams has closed his calendar, and he is preparing to work his hardest around the draft. You're going to get your action very, very soon. Yeah, listen, man, once the finals end, expect a storm, whether it is the floodgates open of all this team has interest in this guy, this player is interested in leaving, this player might want out, this player might not want out, this player's definitely requested a trade. These trades are happening. Like, there is going to be a storm of NBA info coming out after these finals conclude. I'm very, very excited for it. I hope the Warriors are involved in some capacity, and it doesn't just involve re-signing Kuminga, because I want to see this team get better sooner rather than later. But regardless, it's going to be wild around the NBA, and I don't want Kevin Durant and Giannis, joining loaded teams in the Western Conference. It just makes things much harder for Golden State. So with that being said, how do the Dubs kind of compete? I want to know from you, what's the number one move the Warriors must make this offseason? You let me know down in the comment section what you think that is, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because if that move goes down, we are going to break it down right here at Warriors Today. So lock us in for nonstop Warriors content all offseason long. We're going to see you guys in the next one, and as always, let's go Dubs.